Hey puzzlers, this is Steven here with another video on how to play some logic puzzles. This one's called rain clouds. The rules state that the numbers along the outside of the grid indicate how many shaded cells or cloud segments are in the row or column. Each cloud must be a minimum size of 2 by 2 and must be squared or rectangular. So it could be larger, it could be a 4 by 2 or 6 by 2 or 4 by 4, but at least it has to be 2 by 2. The rain clouds must not be adjacent to one another, not even diagonally, and clouds are rounded along the corners. And that last part is important because sometimes they'll give you a clue to start off with. Like in this example, they've given us a cloud segment here, and we know that that is the bottom left corner of the cloud. So you couldn't have the cloud look like that, but the cloud could be a 2 by 2 like that, or it could be a 2 by 4 or 4 by 3. But we know that that is the bottom left corner of the cloud. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is try to solve this puzzle for you guys, share some common tips and tricks, and hopefully make it easier for you to solve them yourselves in the future. So typically I start always with the zeros and any given cells. So this is a 0. We know that all of these cells in that column are not going to contain a cloud. So we can, I'm going to use gray. To basically X those out. The next thing, here's that given segment. We know there can't be another cloud adjacent to it, so we can X out all the cells there, knowing that another cloud couldn't be here for say, right? Like let's say this is a 2 by 2, you couldn't have another cloud like that because the two clouds would be touching one another diagonally. So I'm gonna just go ahead and color this gray here, knowing that that is not a cloud segment. And because I know that this is a at a minimum 2 by 2, I can actually color that in like that, because I know that again at a minimum it's 2 by 2. So let's go ahead and just delete that segment there. So I know that that is the minimum size of the cloud. Now this 2 in this row is now solved. So everything else in that row can be X'd out. Oops, just like that. So let's make that gray. Let's make it the same color. Now, when it comes to threes are really important because you can't ever have, right, 2 cloud segments here and then a third one up here. And the reason for that is if you did, right, let's say we color that in, everything else would be gray, and now all of a sudden you have a cloud size that's too small, right? Remember, you have to have a 2 by 2, and you can't have it not be squared. So you couldn't have, you know, a cloud looking like this weird oblong shape. Right, this has to be part of, it has to be squared. So threes are really important because now we know all of a sudden this third cloud segment is here. Can't be anywhere else. Anytime you have a 3, it has to be part of the one cloud. So because we know that that is a cloud segment, we know that this one's a cloud segment just to the left of it, because again, you can't have a shape that's not squared. And we know that this is no more than 2 wide. So because of that, we know that these are not cloud segments. So now this 3 is solved, so we can actually gray the rest of that column out. And this 2 actually is solved in this row now, right? There's 2 cloud segments already discovered. Let's see, what else can we do? So the next clue I would say is just be cognizant of any even or odd clues, right? Again, with this 3, we know that they have to be all part of one cloud. And so because of that, this is an even number. This doesn't work over here. These 2 is not big enough, so we know that that's not part of the cloud segment. In this 6, right, we can't have it all be down here. There's only 2, 4, right? That would only be a 4 by 2, and so we would need at least 2 more up here in this area. And because of that, it's either going to be those two or those two at a minimum. Now it could be those three and then say three down here, but that's using that min-max logic where, you know, at most this is 4. So at a minimum, this has to be 2. And either way, these overlap. So we know that that is part of a cloud segment. And now this is an odd clue. This is 5. We already have 2. So we know 3 has to be together. So there has to be either 3 here, 3 there, 3 there, or 3 there. You couldn't have, say, 2 over here and 1 over here. Hopefully that makes sense. This 4 clue, right, it's going to have 2 up here and 2 down here because there's only 3 at most up here. And again, you can't have 3 and then 1. So in fact, we know that these 2 are part of the cloud. And then either has to be these 2 or those 2, but either way, this overlaps. So we know that. And now this cloud down here is either going to be a 2 by 2 like that, or 2 by 3, or 2 by 4. But we know this cell can never be part of that cloud, right? Because again, you couldn't have a weird shape like that. So this is gray. And now this brings me to my next clue. When it comes to edges, so if you're like 1x away, or basically you know that you've blocked out all the possible cells except 1, you have to be cognizant of edges. And so this here, we know that there's 2. Well, we're 1 away from the edge. This can't be part of it. So we know that this is going to be grayed out. And then here, you know, again, there has to be 2 in these columns. There's not enough space here. So let's cover those. So this is a 10 by 12. So if we know that we need to find 10 gray cells in these columns and 2 blue ones. And then if we look for the rows, right, we need to find 5 gray cells. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Where to next? Oh, here. So this, because we grayed out this cell, we know that this is constrained. It can't go up anymore, right? Because again, you can't have this weird shape of a cloud like that. Let's see. That does not work, right? It has to be squared or rectangle. So this is in fact gray, and then these 2 are gray too, because once you have a cloud, you can't have any other cloud adjacent to it. Okay, so this 5, we know has got to be a combination of 3 and then a 2, right? Because we can't have 2 plus 2, that's 4. And you can't have a 5th one over here because this would be stranded all by itself. So we know that this 3 is part of the cloud. And because we know it's got to be at least 2 by 2, it's got to come up at least 1. And that solved this 5. So the rest of that row is now shaded. And we know this cell here can't be part of the cloud because that would be, again, this has to be rectangle or squared. But either way, it can't jut over here. So that's grayed out. This has to be a minimum of 2 by 2. And it can't come down for the second one. So it has to come up. So we know that. That solves that 4 actually. So that's nice. And now this 3, we have the 1 segment. So it can't be any of these. Remember, you can't have 2 and then 1. And that's basically my last clue, is just remember that 2 by 2 minimum rule is really helpful, because again, the 3, you can't have 1 and then 2 over here, or 2 and then 1. So none of these are going to be part of that cloud, or part of the cloud. So because this has to be a part of 3, it's either going to be these 3 or those 3, but either way, this overlaps. And we then know the cell below it is part of a cloud, because again, you can't have this weird L shape. So that's part of that. That solves this 2. So now we can actually gray all of those out. And now you can't have cloud segments here. There's not enough space. So we can gray those out. Same here. There's not enough space there. We got to gray that out. So this is now a 2 by 2 that direction. And now this 5 clue means that these 2 have to be shaded. This 2 means that these 2 have to be shaded. This 5 is solved, so this cloud cannot go any further. This 6, we have 3, we need another 3, so it can't be these 2. It's got to be these 3 like that. That solves this 3. We have 3 in that column. So those are all grayed out. This 2 needs to be these now. And since it's got to be a 2 by 2 minimum, it's got to jut out like that. This can't be part of it. And in fact, this 5 is solved. We have 3 plus 2. And then we know that, oops, like that. This 4, so these one oddball ones, there's not enough space. Those have to be grayed out. So this 4 needs 2 more. And since it has to be a 2 by 2, it's got to come down 1. We have 2 here, so we need 4 down here to solve these 6s. So those are glued in. And then these 7s mean that these last 2 are going to be blue, right? 2, 4, 6, we need 1 more. So there we go. Let's make that the same gray. We've solved it. That is how you do a rain clouds. I like it a lot. A lot of logic puzzles say that you can only be 1 wide, right? Like a Nurakob puzzle can't have any 2 by 2 areas. Snake puzzles can't have any 2 by 2 areas. So this is one of the few puzzles where you're allowed to have a 2 by 2 area, and it leads to some interesting logic. So I like it a lot. Hopefully you guys did too. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe for more in the future. Thanks everyone. Have a good night.